Flat hood, square-cornered fenders, a step-side bed with edges sharp enough to trace with a finger. That silhouette is burned into the memory of anyone who ever watched a blue GMC pickup roll up outside Jon Baker's condo on CHiPs. Here's the part nobody tells you. General Motors never engineered that truck to look like that. Not on purpose, not even close. The company that built it gave it a completely different name, one built around the opposite idea, and lost that argument so badly that almost nobody alive today has ever heard the name GM actually chose. This is the story of how a truck engineered to be rounded became famous for being square. Before we get into it, if you're the kind of person who wants the real story behind the vehicles you grew up watching, told with actual documentation instead of recycled trivia, this channel exists for exactly that. Staying subscribed means you catch the next one. To understand what happened to this truck's reputation, you have to go back further than CHiPs ever gets credit for. Back to 1973, 5 years before Jon Baker ever climbed into one, when General Motors quietly replaced its entire pickup lineup with something the company considered a genuine leap forward. The trucks GM was retiring, the so-called Action Line generation that had carried the CK badge since 1967, were, by the standards of the early 1970s, getting old. Flatter glass, tighter cabs, a driving position that put you further back from the road than GM's engineers now believed was necessary. So when the replacement generation came together, it wasn't styled around toughness for its own sake. It was styled around a problem. How much can we let a driver actually see, and how efficiently can this shape move through the air while we do it? Picture a wristwatch company redesigning a case to have softened, rounded edges, chasing something sleeker on the wrist, and the buying public looks at the same watch, shrugs off every rounded edge, and starts calling the whole line the brick because of its overall footprint. The maker's intent and the public's read never even land in the same conversation. That's precisely the gap this truck fell into, decades before anyone painted it blue and put a badge number on the door. GM's engineers ran the new body through wind tunnel testing, a genuinely advanced step to take on a pickup truck in that era, when most trucks were still styled by instinct and stamped panel convenience rather than airflow data. The windshield picked up rounded corners, the door frames picked up rounded corners, the wheel openings, square in outline, still had their corners softened into curves. The cab itself moved forward, sitting closer to the front axle than the outgoing generation ever had, opening up sight lines that made the truck genuinely easier and safer to drive. That's a 20% increase in glass area over the previous generation, a real measured engineering outcome, not a marketing exaggeration. And that number is the entire foundation of what GM chose to call this platform internally. Not the tough line, not the rugged line, the rounded line. GM wasn't being ironic when it picked that name. By its own engineering metrics, it had built something rounder, smoother, and more open than anything that came before it, and it wanted the name to say so. Hey, real quick before we keep going. There's a car burned into your head right now from some movie you saw 20 years ago. I built something for that. It's called the Hollywood Car Vault. 25 of the most legendary cars and trucks in movie and TV history. Real illustrated art for everyone, and the real story behind it. Not the version everyone half remembers, the actual history. What Hollywood faked, what happened to the real ones, and what they're worth today. Tap through it right on your phone. No app, no download. And it keeps growing. New rides get added later, free for everyone already in. $17, one time, links in the description if you want in. All right, back to it. None of that engineering philosophy had anything to do with why CHiPs eventually put one of these trucks in front of a camera. When the show swapped Jon Baker out of his personal car partway through the second season, the production wasn't thinking about wind tunnel coefficients. It was thinking about image. Baker's first off-duty vehicle had been a small foreign hatchback, a choice that gave the character an unusual, slightly offbeat visual identity in the show's first season. Reports from the production era suggest the change came down to a producer's read that the character needed something more traditionally rugged and American to match the rest of his profile. Steady, outdoorsy, a former serviceman with a grounded physical presence. Whether that reasoning was expressed in exactly those terms hasn't been independently confirmed beyond second-hand retellings, so take the specific phrasing as reported rather than settled. What's not in question is that the swap happened and that a full-size 4x4 pickup replaced a small European car as the character's personal vehicle starting in Season 2. The truck that filled that role was dressed for the part. Custom blue paint over the factory color, a body-matched sport bar mounted in the bed carrying a pair of off-road driving lights, a matching grille guard up front, wheels that most viewers assumed were some kind of aftermarket upgrade, but were actually factory-style 8-spoke steel wheels with chrome center caps and polished trim rings added. The same basic wheel GM already offered, just dressed up rather than swapped out. All-terrain tires with raised white lettering finished the look. None of it changed the ride height or the underlying chassis. It was a factory truck wearing a costume, not a modified one underneath. For 6 seasons and 139 episodes, that dressed-up shape sat in front of a national television audience every week, long enough that the silhouette stopped registering as a proc and started functioning as shorthand. Audiences recognized the truck before they'd even registered what scene they were in. And here's where the record gets honestly murky, which is worth stating plainly rather than smoothing over the way a lot of nostalgia content tends to. More than one physical truck carried the role across those 6 seasons. That much is well supported by the visual inconsistencies that survive in the episodes themselves. But how many trucks, sourced from where, under exactly what arrangement, has no surviving paperwork attached to it that's been made public? Even something as basic as the truck's license plate can't be pinned down with confidence. One account of the production gives the primary plate as 1E49944. A separate, independently maintained record gives it as 1E49964. Neither has been confirmed against the other, and no documentation has surfaced to settle which is accurate, or whether both are right, referring to different trucks at different points. That's not a gap in this research. That's the actual unresolved state of the record for a vehicle this recognizable. The plate story gets stranger the further into the series you look for what it's worth. Multiple different plate numbers have been reported across the show's run despite the paint, stance, and accessories staying visually consistent. Evidence, even without a full paper trail, that vehicle rotation was happening quietly behind a very stable-looking front. None of that behind-the-scenes ambiguity touched the shape on screen, though. The silhouette held steady for the entire run, and the public reaction to that silhouette went in a direction nobody at General Motors had planned for, years before CHiPs ever put a camera on it. Buyers, mechanics, and eventually the automotive press looked at the rounded line and didn't see rounded anything. They saw a wide, flat-planed, square-shouldered truck, bigger glass and softened corners or not. And they started calling it what it looked like to them from across a parking lot: square body. It wasn't a marketing term. Nobody at General Motors coined it, approved it, or ever printed it on a brochure. It came from the people actually buying, driving, and eventually restoring these trucks, and it stuck almost immediately. Hard enough that it's now effectively the only name most people have ever heard for this generation. 14 years of continuous production running from 1973 all the way through 1987 without a major redesign, and the entire run carries a nickname its own manufacturer never gave it, and, as far as the public record shows, never tried to reclaim. That's the environment Jon Baker's truck was born into, cosmetically speaking. By the time it rolled onto CHiPs in 1978, the rounded line name was already losing its battle in the marketplace. The truck people were watching every week wasn't just an anonymous GM pickup. It was, specifically, an example of the exact generation the public had already decided to call by the opposite of what GM intended. So here's the plain version of it, without dressing it up any further. The single most recognizable visual trait of Jon Baker's truck, the boxy, square-shouldered stance that makes it instantly identifiable on sight, decades after the show ended, was never the design goal. It's the literal opposite of the design goal. General Motors spent real engineering effort chasing roundness. It measured that effort in glass area and wind tunnel results. It named the entire platform after that pursuit, and the world looked at the finished product and remembered it forever for exactly the trait GM was working to soften. The name GM actually gave this truck has nearly vanished from public memory. You won't find rounded line on a parts box, a forum thread, or an auction listing. The name the public gave it in return is the one that survived, printed in restoration catalogs, spoken in sport truck communities, used without a second thought by people who've never once heard there was a different name to lose. Rounded line, lost. Square body, won. And it won so completely that most people who now own, drive, or instantly recognize one of these trucks have no idea the manufacturer ever called it anything else. That's worth knowing if you're looking at one of these trucks today, whether the goal is a chip's accurate build or just an appreciation for the platform on its own terms. The square body market, and it's worth noting that's the only name you'll find it under when you go looking, is active and genuinely well supported. This isn't a generation where parts availability is a gamble. Reproduction sheet metal, trim pieces, and interior components are widely produced, specifically because demand for this platform never faded the way it has for some other classic trucks of the same era. If the goal is the exact character-accurate look, the fender side bed style, the sport bar mounting points, the period-correct steel wheel dressed up rather than swapped, none of that requires chasing down a screen-used survivor, which, as established, doesn't appear to exist in any documented form anyway. It requires knowing what to look for on a clean base truck of the correct generation and building outward from there. For anyone wanting a smaller scale reference point before committing to a full build, there are decent options in scale model form as well, generally landing somewhere in the $10 to $35 range, depending on scale and how close a match the base kit is to the actual screen truck. Useful for planning a paint and accessory layout before touching real sheet metal. There's something almost fitting about a truck this recognizable carrying a name its own maker never chose, and as far as the record shows, never got back. Most objects that become iconic get remembered for becoming exactly what someone intended them to be. This one didn't. It became famous for the argument it lost, quietly, at the language level, years before it ever wore Jon Baker's paint job. And nobody, including the company that engineered it, ever won that argument back. The shape people picture when they picture this truck isn't a design choice anyone signed off on. It's a rebuttal that's stuck, wearing a badge number and a fresh coat of blue paint.